The last time the UFC was in Atlanta, Georgia was UFC 236 in April of 2019, and on that night, it was special. It featured two all-time classic interim championship bouts. First was Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier's second fight, and now, of course, we are just a month away from their third fight in the trilogy. And the co-main event was the all-time classic, and in being inducted into the Hall of Fame this summer, Israel Adesanya defeating Kelvin Gastelum in an absolute blood and guts war. And while this weekend isn't a pay-per-view card, and there aren't two championship fights at the top of the bill, we do see a plethora of very intriguing matchups coming to Atlanta, Georgia, and the main event is between the former champion, the Nigerian Nightmare Kamaru Usman, currently sitting at number 5 in the 170-pound division, taking on the surging number 7 ranked Joaquin Buckley, a big one at 170. And this is a big one because the welterweight division has been absolutely electric in 2025 so far. Everything is churning. We've got new champion in Jack Della Maddalena. We've got new contenders such as Sean Brady and Michael Morales, alongside undefeated phenom Shavkat Rakhmonov and a veteran at this point, Ian Machado Gary, having his surge up the ranks. We've even got Kevin Holland re-entering the top 15 after last weekend's performance at UFC 316. 170 pounds is the most fun division in the UFC currently, June 11th of 2025 when I'm recording this, but that can always change because the year started big for the middleweight division. And now it's Kamaru Usman and Joaquin Buckley's turn to make some noise and put themselves right there in the mix of title contention in this division. And honestly, it's been a decade since Kamaru Usman hasn't been in the mix, so I'm not saying he isn't going into this fight, but if he loses, he's definitely out of there. After all, he's 38 years old and on a 3-fight losing streak as he enters this bout. Complete opposite momentum compared to what Joaquin Buckley carries into this fight, a 6-fight win streak. The losing streak for Usman started at UFC 278 in August of 2022 with the head kick heard around the world from his rival Leon Edwards in their rematch in a fight that Usman was winning pretty convincingly, may I add, up until the 4-minute and 4-second mark of the 5th and final round when he would be put to sleep. Then in March of 2023 at UFC 286, the trilogy bout would take place, this time with Leon Edwards as the champion and Kamaru Usman as the challenger, and they would go 25 minutes with Leon this time getting the edge and winning the majority decision. And then we would see a relatively quick turnaround for Kamaru as he would fight in October of 2023 up a weight class on very short notice against Khamzat Chimaev at middleweight, where Chimaev would get the majority decision win, but it was an absolute back and forth 15-minute affair. But that's it. That's the most recent fight for Kamaru. October 21st of 2023, over a year and a half now of inactivity. We have not seen him in the cage, and again, at 38 years old, time is not on his side. It's now or never if Kamaru Usman wants to remain relevant and get one last run at a championship. He even said as such in his media day, not only wanting to win the 170-pound belt again, but vacate it and move up to 185.
Myself, Dricus du Plessis, if he is the champion, or Khamzat Chimaev too, if Dricus is no longer the champion. If Dricus is the champion, we'll do that in the first card in Africa. I mean, that's another blockbuster. These are back-to-back blockbuster fights that you tell your grandkids about, and who wouldn't watch those?
And those are definitely some lofty goals. We know the statistics behind 170 pounds and lower when you're 35 years of age and older. But if anybody can do it, it is Kamaru Usman, the former long-time reigning welterweight champion, the second greatest welterweight of all time in my opinion, and is tied for the second longest win streak in UFC history with Islam Makhachev at 15 wins in a row to start his UFC career, mind you. So I believe that the man that went from July of 2015 to August of 2022 unbeaten can absolutely bounce back here against the younger up-and-comer in Buckley. But it's hard to say that at this point Buckley's an up-and-comer, because at this point he's got 15 fights in the UFC with an 11-4 record in the company. And by the way, he made his UFC debut less than 5 years ago in August of 2020, so this will be his 16th UFC fight in 5 years. He remains very, very active and currently is in the biggest stretch and best best stretch of his entire career. 6 wins in a row, and the last 4 have been ultra impressive if we want to look at the name value and the way in which he got the victories. We first go to the most recent fight for Joaquin Buckley, and that was December of 2024, the main event against the former interim title challenger and rival of his competitor this weekend, Kamaru Usman, Colby Chaos Covington. And he would not only win that fight, but he would dominate that fight en route to a 3rd round TKO via doctor stoppage due to the damage inflicted. Then before that, he finished former 2-time title challenger Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and he did it with a 3rd round knockout. He got a very convincing win over the surging and ultra-dangerous Nursultan Ruziboev, and before that, took out Vicente Luque via 2nd round knockout. Joaquin Buckley is insanely dangerous, and it's clear and evident that he is entering his prime right now, and fight by fight, as the competition gets better, he does too. He went from the guy being known for the craziest knockout in UFC history.
They're so even on total strikes at the moment.
To a legitimate title contender if he wins against Kamaru Usman. Dare I say, maybe he's even the #1 contender. Problem is, there's about 17 #1 contenders at 170 pounds right now, but damn is he good, and is he close to a title shot if he wins. And he has finished 15 of his 21 victories by way of knockout. However, we've only seen his opponent Kamaru be knocked out once in 4 losses, and that was the insane head kick that we previously alluded to. So I kind of struggle to see Joaquin Buckley coming in here and knocking out Kamaru Usman. However, he doesn't have to in order to get a win. If he wasn't going to finish Colby Covington via the doctor stoppage, he was absolutely going to cruise his way to a dominant decision, in my opinion, barring something insane happening. And I think if he fights the exact same way he did against Colby, completely neutralizing any bit of grappling that he wanted to do, he can absolutely beat Kamaru Usman, who, much like Colby Covington, is known for his grappling and wrestling. And I can't reiterate it enough. At 38 years old, Kamaru is going to be significantly slower, especially after nearly 2 years out of the cage. We know the storylines behind his knees and how bad they are, having to walk up and down steps backwards, having to get injections numerous times leading into many fight weeks. He's been wrestling ever since he was a young kid, and it is evidently catching up with him. But has it caught up with him fully, or can he become the victor, end his losing streak, and cash as the betting underdog, albeit the accomplishments that he has? And those accomplishments include 5 title defenses and that aforementioned 15-fight win streak tied for 2nd all-time. The guy is an all-time GOAT. This is everything you want to see, in my opinion, in a UFC main event. You have the seasoned veteran who's been there, who's done that, and is clearly one of the best fighters we've ever laid eyes on in the UFC, but coming in with no momentum, on a 3-fight skid, with a lot of inactivity, versus the younger up-and-comer, 31 years old, 7 years younger, as a matter of fact, in Joaquin Buckley, who is riding a high right now, 6 wins in a row, finishing former title challengers and dangerous opponents, one by one, fight after fight, now getting the biggest spot of his career, his 2nd ever UFC main event, and it's happening at a perfect and pivotal point in the welterweight division's history, with all of the activity going on, a new champion in Jack Della Maddalena, numerous contenders, numerous prospects. This is a massive main event, and good for UFC Atlanta for getting it in their return from the company in 5 years. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this fight down in the comments below. Will Joaquin Buckley make it 7 consecutive wins and another title holder under his resume and on his belt? Or will it be Kamaru Usman bouncing back from the 3-fight skid, the 2-year near layoff, and putting himself right there amongst the title contenders, even at 38 years old? And now that we are done with the main event, let's jump into the rest of the card, because the action just keeps going. And it starts in the co-main event between the former 2-time strawweight champion turned flyweight contender Rose Namajunas, number 7 in the world right now, versus the surging number 11 ranked prospect Miranda Maverick, looking to make a name for herself off of her former training partner. Thug Rose Namajunas, one of the greatest female fighters in UFC history, is back for her 5th fight in the 125-pound division since making the move up in September of 2023, and so far she's gone 2-2 in the promotion. She lost her debut to Manon Fior in that September 2023 bout, would win 2 in a row to start 2024 against Amanda Ribas and Tracy Cortez, and then would lose at the end of 2024 to Erin Blanchfield, who is one of the best fighters in the flyweight division division right now, and I believe in the top 5 at number 4. But even in both of the losses at 125 pounds to Aaron and to Menifield, it wasn't like she got outclassed. She was in both of those fights and competing at a very high level. She just got out-volumed, quite frankly, by Menifield and had the more impactful shots landed. And for Erin Blanchfield, pretty much the same can be said. Although the fight with Erin was definitely more competitive and potentially closer than that one with Manon. But regardless, Rose is still just 32 years old. That's the prime for a lot of UFC fighters that we see, yet she's already been a 2-time strawweight champion. She's beaten Joanna Jędrzejczyk twice. She's beaten Zhang Weili. She's beaten Jessica Andrade. She's beaten the who's who at 115. She's got 2 solid wins at 125, but yet to get that marquee win. And I'm not necessarily saying that Miranda Maverick is that marquee win, but it is against the younger, fresher, and up-and-coming fighter who is just 27 years old and kind of similar to the main event, riding the best stretch of her career so far, 4 wins in a row, looking for number 5. Miranda Maverick's strength is probably unmatched in this 125-pound division. She is built like a freight train. She strangleholds her opponents down to the mat, holds them there with ease, and presses down on them with her ground and pound, and even locks in numerous submissions as we've seen as well. And low-key, one of the better years of 2024 in all of women's MMA belonged to Miranda Maverick, as she went 3-0 with unanimous decision wins over Andrea Lee, Dione Barboza, and Jamie Lynn Horth, who's also competing on UFC Atlanta's card. But obviously, those names aren't Rose Namajunas. This is a massive step up for Miranda Maverick because prior to that win streak, her biggest step-ups in competition were the losses on her UFC record. Jasmine Jasudavicius was her last loss in June of 2023. Then she also lost to Erin Blanchfield and Macy Barber. To be fair, she should have won the Macy Barber fight. But still, a loss is a loss, and technically her 3 closest fights have been to the best names on her resume. So this is Miranda's chance to not only prove that she belongs into the top 10 of the flyweight division, but to prove that she can get it done in the biggest spots against the best opponents in the biggest opportune times. And is she going to be able to utilize her strength and her wrestling against Rose Namajunas, who's been there and done that against a who's who across 2 different weight classes at this point? If we revisit the fight that Rose had with Erin Blanchfield, she would be outstruck 193 to 101. However, she would defend 6 out of 8 takedowns from Erin. But Erin was able to rack up 8 minutes and 54 seconds of control time with those takedowns and her clinch control up against the fence. So can Miranda Maverick take what Erin Blanchfield did and did not do successfully and implement it here for her game plan against Rose Namajunas? Because it's pretty obvious to me, if she can't get the takedowns and it's purely a striking match, it will not be competitive. Rose Namajunas is just light years above in the striking realm right now from Miranda. Not to say Miranda can't eventually polish up her game enough to compete with someone like Rose on the feet, but right now where it stands, it will not be competitive. And if it is, Miranda Maverick has grown leaps and bounds from what we've been shown. So that's the simple fact of the matter. If Rose keeps the fight standing, Rose bounces back from the Erin Blanchfield loss and improves to 3-2 at 125 pounds and holds her spot at number 7. But if Miranda Maverick can escape and close the distance on Rose, get her down to the ground and hold her there, even impose her will toward ground and pound or a submission finish, that would be the biggest moment of her young career. And if anybody can do it against Rose, it is someone who has felt her in the training room numerous times, sparred and trained with her in Colorado, and we don't know who got the best of each other in those training sessions, but these 2 ladies surely do. Next, we go to the featured bout in the middleweight division as Andre Petroski comes in as the betting underdog, even though he's on a 3-fight win streak, already 1 fight under his belt this year against Rodolfo Vieira, and in 2024 wins over Josh Fremd and Dylan Bugka. And in the red corner is the golden boy Edmen Shahbazyan, having won 2 of his last 3 bouts, including a win in February against Dylan Bugka, but unlike Petroski, he finished him, and he did it just 1 minute and 35 seconds in with a TKO. Edmen Shahbazyan at 27, he was pushed to the moon so quickly, being under the realm of Ronda Rousey in her gym years ago when he got that main event opportunity against Derek Brunson, and we know that that was just too much too soon, and it really halted where he got in his career. He went on a stretch of losing 4 out of 5 fights, with 3 of those 4 losses coming by way of knockout, but it seems that he's riding the ship, it seems that he's polishing up his skills, and again, Again, 27 years old. The guy still has years to go before he technically enters his prime. And the shorter the fight lasts, odds are Edmen's going to win. At least that's where he'll be more favored to win, because 14 wins, 13 of them have been by finish, 12 of them by knockout, and every single one of his victories outside of 2 have come in round number 1. And conveniently for Shahbazyan, all 3 of Andre Petroski's losses have been by way of knockout. But for what it's worth, I don't feel like Andre Petroski gets the respect he deserves, and maybe it's because he's in some sloppy fights here and there. He's not finishing at a very high clip, but since making his debut in August of 2021, he's garnered a record of 8-2 in the UFC. He started 5-0, then lost to Michel Pereira, who at that time was absolutely surging, and Jacob Malkoun, a soccer kick to the body, something very rare, but has bounced back since then with the aforementioned 3-fight win streak. This guy is legit, and honestly, I feel like the winner of this could probably fight a ranked opponent next. So it may not look like there's high stakes heading in, but when you dig into it, there's a lot on the line here. We've got 2 dogs competing on the main card of this UFC Atlanta fight night, as well as Cody Garbrandt is back for the first time since his UFC 300 fight and loss to Deiveson Figueiredo, and he is taking on the veteran and battle-tested Raoni Barcelos. We learned that during the fight with Deiveson Figueiredo, Cody Garbrandt would begin experiencing vertigo when he was taken down to the ground, was spinning, his head was all crazy, going dizzy, and he would ultimately get finished in that second round via submission from the former champ. But, I mean, come on, that's Deiveson Figueiredo. Because before that, Cody Garbrandt had kind of righted the ship. He had won back-to-back fights over Brian Kelleher via knockout, mind you, and over Trevin Jones, where he utilized more grappling and wrestling than we had ever seen him use before. We obviously know that his career has went downward since becoming a champion years ago against Dominic Cruz. Honestly, that night we may have seen the best bantamweight step into the cage of all time. That performance is still an instant classic, one of the, if not the best title-earning wins in UFC history. And if that version of Cody Garbrandt can ever make a return, or even get a close comparison to it, Cody Garbrandt's one of the best bantamweights in the world. But it's remained to be seen since then. Even in the wins, he hasn't necessarily looked like a phenom that's unbeatable like he did that night. But can he get the nod over Barcelos, make it 3 out of 4, and probably get a top 15 opponent in the aftermath due to his name value? That's what's in store for Cody, but it's not going to be an easy feat. Because even though he's 38 years old, Barcelos is coming in on a 2-fight win streak, and the most recent is taking the perfect record away from Peyton Talbot at UFC 311. He dominated him in that unanimous decision win, and before that he finished Christian Quinones with a submission. This fight is going to be supremely entertaining, and honestly, don't be surprised either which way that the fight goes. It could be a finish from Raoni, it could be a finish from Cody Garbrandt, it could be a 15-minute blood and guts war, but it's going to deliver, in my opinion, for us fans. Selfishly, for my Ohio boy Cody Garbrandt, I of course hope he can get back on track, but I wouldn't feel bad if Barcelos can get the victory, because at 38, that's quite a feat. One of the best prospects in the UFC right now is Mansur Abdul-Malik, who is 8-0 with 8 finishes, 7 by knockout, 27 years young, and already 2-0 in the UFC since debuting in November of last year, since fighting on the Contender Series in August of last year, and now he steps into the cage versus the veteran Cody Brundage, looking to go 3-0 in the octagon. His most recent fight was a knockout against Nick Klein back in February, and his debut was a first-round knockout over Dusko Todorovic. But Cody Brundage is a sneaky, dangerous fighter. You cannot count him out. His last 2 victories have been by way of knockout, one of them even being a slam that he had against Zachary Reese. He's strong and he's powerful. However, he does put himself in danger sometimes, and if anybody's going to capitalize on it, it is Mansur. With just 3 decisions total between the both of these men in 27 fights, and all 3 of them going to the side of Cody Brundage, don't blink. And from one of the best undefeated prospects in the UFC to one of the other best undefeated prospects in the UFC, we travel to the light heavyweight division where Oumar Sy can remain undefeated and break into the top 15 of the light heavyweight division, if and only if he can put away the number 15 ranked vet Alonzo Menifield. Alonzo righted the ship from his 2-fight losing streak in 2024 with a short notice replacement win over Julius Walker, Walker being the UFC debutant that took the fight on short notice. literally in under a week's time, if I remember correctly, and they would go the distance in a 15-minute banger. But Alonzo would get the better of him in the striking and with the volume and with the bigger shots, and ultimately get the decision win. But against the two best opponents of Menifield's career, he suffered defeat. Azamat Murzakanov, who just got a victory at UFC 316 and is still undefeated, and Carlos Alberg, who I think is now on a 7 or 8 fight win streak and a legitimate title threat in the light heavyweight division. However, the competition level that Alonzo has faced is much better and much deeper than that of Oumar Sy, who has had 2 fights in the UFC, both in 2024, May and September respectively, against George Tokos and Dawoon Jung, a decision over Jung and a finish over Tokos with a first-round submission. But at 29 years old, at 6'4", built like a statue, he's honestly the light heavyweight's version of Cyril Gane, and he's from Paris, France. 11-0, 4 knockouts, 4 submissions. He can get the job done in all facets of the game. This is a man to keep your eyes on in the light heavyweight division. I've said it since he made his debut over a year ago now, and if he beats Alonzo Menifield, he's rightfully taken his spot in the top 15 of 205 and on to a big 2025 potentially for C. I won't spend too much time on this next one because I've already broken it down once. It's a rebooking between Rodolfo Bellato and Paul Craig, making his return to 205 pounds. And this return comes after a 1-3 stint at 185 pounds where it started great, a finish win over Andre Muniz, but then went downhill with 3 straight losses, 2 of them by finish, Brendan Allen, Caio Borralho, and then a decision loss to Bo Nickel. That most recent fight against Nickel came back at UFC 309 in November, so now Paul Craig is back after a sizable gap in action for his sake at least, but Bellato, he's dangerous. He's 12-2-1 with 11 finishes to his name, and his most recent fight was a draw with Jimmy Crute at UFC 312, but prior to that was on a 4-fight win streak, 3 of them by way of knockout, including his win on the Contender Series in 2023 and his debut win against Ihor Potieria. This fight likely doesn't go the 15 minutes. It likely goes in Bellato's favor, but if not, that means Paul Craig has pulled off some crazy shit again.
And contest.
Oh, look at this! Beautiful work by Paul Craig.
Big triangle set up.
Oh,
In the dying seconds.
We've got a low-key fun one here between 2 veterans, Michael Chiesa and Court McGee. 40 years old for McGee, 37 for Michael Chiesa, yet they're coming in with momentum. McGee's coming off of a first-round submission win over the Dirty Bird Tim Means last October, and Michael Chiesa is on a 2-fight submission win streak over Max Griffin and Tony Ferguson. And before that, Chiesa had lost to Kevin Holland, Sean Brady, and Vicente Luque, so a win here, and he's right back in the top 15 of 170 pounds. Again, this division is insane right now. And look, I'm not saying Michael Chiesa is going to climb all the way back to title contention, but it's not crazy to think that he can put his name up against some of these young up-and-comers and give them a fight and maybe even hand them a loss. But first he has to hand the loss to the veteran in Court McGee. And I feel like this fight likely doesn't go the distance. Does Chiesa get a submission though? Because Court McGee has never been submitted in his career. Georgia's own Malcolm Wellmaker begged and pleaded to be on this card following his UFC debut win and first-round knockout over Cameron Simon just recently on the April 26th card in Kansas City. And he gets his wish, and he's taking on former Sean O'Malley opponent Kris Moutinho. Yes, he's back with another short-notice UFC fight. But since his brief 2-fight stint in the UFC where he would go 0-2 with 2 knockout losses, Kris has won 5 fights in a row on the regional scene, with all 5 of them by way of finish, 3 knockouts, and 2 submissions. He's getting it done everywhere. Overall, he's 14-6, 9 victories by way of stoppage, been finished in all 6 of his losses. However, it's no surprise that Malcolm Wellmaker is a massive favorite heading into this fight. 31 years old, in his prime, 9-0 with 7 finishes. There are 3 undefeated prospects on this card that have the opportunity to shine in Atlanta, Georgia, and Malcolm Wellmaker is one of them. And last but not least, if I ever miss a breakdown of a Ricky Simone fight, call me crazy, because my man War Ricky is back once again, but he's getting a short notice replacement opponent in Cameron Smotherman. Ricky finally bounced back after his 3-fight skid in 2023 and 2024 with a win and first-round knockout over Javid Basharat just recently in February at UFC Seattle in his home state. And the babyface killer Cameron Smotherman enters this fight having just fought May 3rd in Des Moines, Iowa, losing a decision to Sergey Sidi. However, prior to that, he won his UFC debut and was on a 4-fight win streak. I think this is an opportunity for Ricky Simón to take on a short notice replacement, get a big win, maybe even a finish, and reinsert himself right on the outside looking in of the bantamweight top 15. My man War Ricky is back at UFC Atlanta, baby. So that is it for the UFC Atlanta breakdown. I'll tell you, top to bottom, this is a sneaky good card. I am ecstatic for the fights on this card, the undefeated prospects, the big-time main event in the welterweight division, an equally as important fight in the women's flyweight division, given all that's going on in that weight class right now. UFC Atlanta, the return for the first time in 5 years. Again, it may not be as crazy as UFC 236 was, but for a fight night, this is a solid one, and I'm looking forward to it, and I hope the crowd there is too. Give me all of your thoughts and your predictions down in the comments below on what you think is going to happen on this UFC Atlanta card, as well as your bets if you plan to make any cash on Saturday night. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new, as we continue to chase the goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers before the end of 2025. On top of breakdowns and previews of the best fights, storylines, and what is at stake heading into each card, I also recap the most meaningful results, and I give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can also join the community on social media at Verbal Spar MMA on X, Instagram, TikTok, and like the Facebook page Verbal Sparring MMA, and you can follow on your favorite audio listening platforms such as Spotify and Apple, where every Monday and Friday podcast episodes are released there. Have a great weekend, enjoy the fights, and I will see you all in the next video.